Dubey sir, now you can unmute and say.
Okay. So, good morning, friends. It's a pleasure to be back again this Sunday. And we have this morning with us Mr. S. Gopalan. Uh, I need not give a formal introduction to Mr. Gopalan because all of us know him. And he is going to speak on a very interesting topic. The theme is Fear is the child of thought. Can the child grow up? And I want to thank Mr. Gopalan for accepting our invitation to be here. And for some of us who are not aware of Mr. Gopalan's background, I would like to mention that Mr. Gopalan is a chartered accountant, but he has been associated with the Valley School for close to 4 decades now and has written a number of books and very interesting ones. So if many of us who have not read his book, I'll suggest you take those uh, volumes from Bud to Blossom and 1+1 Infinity or Eternity. And there's one more, I don't remember the title of the book, but they're very interesting books. With these words, I'll request Mr. Gopalan to please start your talk. And after Gopalan's talk is over, the question and answer session will be taken up. Unfortunately, I'll leave after Mr. Gopalan's talk, so I'll request Harshad Bhai to anchor the conversation after I leave. Thank you so much. Mr. Gopalan, your turn now.
Thank you, Dubeji. Good morning, everybody. Once in a while, I get this phone call from Sushil ji. Aapko abhi talk dena hai. And in the beginning, it was a little scary. I mean, what do you talk about? Until I found a very simple solution to it. So now I don't get nervous. I maintain a website called Nurture Creativity. And in 2020, I took up this topic, Krishnamurti in India, the last decade, 1976 to 1986. There are 118 public talks that Krishnamurti gave during this period. His routine would generally be to arrive in Delhi, sometimes go to Rajghat, sometimes go to Calcutta, then come to Madras, go to Bombay. And at each of these places, he would give 4 to 6 talks. And each talk would be about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Now, I'm from that generation where we listen to the talk from start to finish, right? But today I find that it's difficult for many people to listen to an entire talk of Krishnamurti at one sitting. So what I did in this website is I took each talk and broke it up into clips of 6 to 9 minutes. And every day, one clip is put on an email, and there's a mailing list, and they get this email with that day's clip. And in that process, I have found that to be very meaningful, because each day's clip can be condensed into one sentence, which will be somewhere in that passage of that day, a one-liner. And the essence of that remains with you, and next day there is a continuity. So this started in 2020, and I think it will go on for another year. Then we would have covered all these talks. So whenever I get a request from Sushil ji, what I do is I look at these one-liners, and you can start from any one of them. They are great starting points, because that can be developed very easily. So this one-liner, fear is the child of thought, came in the third public talk in Bombay in 1983. But before I explore that, there's one incidental question that immediately arises. Why do such one-liners or quotes make meaning to us? Now, you have one-liners and quotes like this from seers, from scriptures, from politicians, from persons in authority, and they all seem to take an authority of their own. They all, in one sense, become Mahavakyas. Why? What is the reason for that? And I would like to put this to you. Is it that the harshness of reality of living is very difficult to stay with? And therefore, the human being creates an idea, invents an idea, and escapes from that harshness by living in that world of ideas. Let me give you two examples of this. The French Revolution brought to us this phrase, liberty, equality, fraternity. And you feel very charged when you get into debates about liberty, equality, fraternity, and all that in the outside world. The reality in the outside world is the very opposite. There is no liberty, equality, or fraternity that you find in the outside world. The very coexistence of species requires that some species become food for another. And no species wants to give up its life in the process of becoming food. So how can liberty, equality, and fraternity exist in nature? They can't. So they only exist in the invention of ideas. And then you can get lost into the world of ideas and fight for something that you think is very important, but it's actually only an idea. Another example of this is birth and death. With the moment a birth happens, the death of that event is also born. Birth and death are not separate. They are an intertwined part of a cycle. And you can observe it very easily in observing one's own breath. There is an in-breath and there is an out-breath, and there is a pause. That's a cycle. So death is actually happening in every breath. But we separate death from living because we don't want that feeling of ending to come in. And therefore, the illusion of continuity is maintained. All continuity is only an illusion. It's a creation of our thought. So when any of these statements is questioned by oneself, it opens a line of inquiry. And that is the value of these one-liners and Mahavakyas. They start a process of inquiry, but they don't have to be restricted to seers alone. They can come from anybody. Last week, I received a forward in WhatsApp. I think the person who wrote this piece was Dr. Arshad Parekh. So it set me thinking. So let me tell you what set me thinking. That passage said, Krishnamurti said that there is no authority in this field of learning about our life and mind. Yet, the way he spoke with great passion and clarity indicated that he was the authority. Now, this set me thinking. Definitely, when you listen to Krishnamurti in a talk, he is an authority for us. But why is he an authority? Is it because of his passion and clarity that he is an authority? Does passion and clarity make somebody an authority? So what brings about authority? And why is authority so important? Now, the sun rises every day. We observe that. We don't need the authority of the sun to tell us that the sun rises every day. The observation of the sunset is its own authority. You don't need any further authority after that. And that gives a clue that in observation, there is no authority. Which means, as a corollary, that if we are treating anything as an authority, observation is not taking place. Now, Krishnamurti, other seers, politicians, everybody uses words to communicate. And right through his talks, Krishnamurti repeatedly said, words are symbols. They are not the actual. The word is not the thing. Now, we will discuss on this statement ad infinitum, but what we catch is only the word. We don't catch what is behind the word. And when we don't catch what is behind the word becomes the authority. So can we then say, and this I am putting to all of you, please raise it, challenge it if you will. Can we say that authority rises only with words and not in observation? Can we say that authority arises only in the absence of clarity. Where there is clarity, authority cannot rise. And therefore, absence of clarity is only in the thought intellect, not in observation. So that raises another question. Is observation part of thought intellect, or does observation use thought intellect? Now, how we respond to that question sets going in a whole chain of further inquiry in us. So in the light of this, let us investigate this statement. Fear is the child of thought. And then what I've added, can the child grow up? So the questions that arise straight away is, what is the implication of this word child? And the next question that arises, what is implied in growing up? Thought is the parent of fear. I don't think there's any dispute in that, because if you're not thinking, you can't be afraid. What is all fear about? It is a projection of an imagination of what may happen. That what we project as may happen may or may not happen, or it may happen in a modified form. But it is only this imagination, and in this imagination is all fear. Thought only functions by shuttling between memory and projection. Thought can't remain in the present moment. And therefore, since thought is always shuttling between the past and its imagination, thought must have with it fear. Thought is fear. Therefore, unless thought rises, fear can't arise. So that to me is the first thing, that without a parent, no progeny is possible. Now, all recognition is based upon memory. But does memory mean that thinking is inevitable? We assume that and act that way. Perception too uses memory. We all know also that the body has its own intelligence. The body heals itself. In the process of healing itself, it has to use memory. When you see a cat or a dog going out and selectively eating some leaf or grass, there is memory in that which tells it that this is necessary for the survival of this body. So there is a natural intelligence of being of the body which doesn't require the interference of thought, but that uses memory. And therefore, and you can even take it further, can the body exist without this memory? There is memory at every level of the human body. Even a cell is energy which has come into the framework of a memory. So when energy comes in a particular framework, we call it a molecule of oxygen. When it comes into another framework, we call it a molecule of nitrogen. All that is memory. Therefore, their matter cannot exist without that component of memory. But we have separated as physical, psychological, and we say in the physical this can happen, let us only discuss psychological. That hair splitting is an invention of our intellect. One cannot exist without the other. The body can't exist with the psychological dimension. Psychological dimension cannot arise without the body. So that raises the question, thought and mind, are they inevitable? It seems to be so. And our education, our culture, and our lifestyle, it begins with the separation of the individual. And this separation is reinforced right through life. So much so that it's difficult to even inquire and ask, is there a possibility of a living where this individuality doesn't exist? Thought communicates and operates and strengthens this using words. Now, words are conditioned, and they are conditioned by the culture from which they come. And that is why a question comes up, is translation really possible? You see, most of us, we have read Krishnamurti in English because he spoke in English. But there is any amount of scriptures which are the expressions of the intellect of seers of the past, which is not in English. We come to read English translations of that. Can one get the essence of any of these expressions through the scriptures through a translation? Because the translation takes into account the conditioning of that particular word from that culture. So when you take a word, you take the conditioning. So therefore, every word is limited, not only as a symbol, but also by the conditioning of its culture. For example, I would give you 3 words. Meditation. Now, Krishnamurti every time raises meditation in his talks, he redefines what he means by meditation. Because meditation comes with a whole baggage of conditioning of this is what meditation is. The moment you say meditation, you say back straight, arms cross-legged, etc., etc. There's an image which rises with that word. It's very difficult to see meditation without that image. Similarly, we have a word here in the Indian languages of dharma. There's no translation for this in English. It's translated as duty, but duty has a completely different implication. Dharma is dharma, it is not duty. Similarly, responsibility. What is responsibility? There was a very interesting incident observed by a colleague of ours, Dr. Rajaram Kudli, who has talked on this earlier. When he was in IIT as a professor, there was another lady professor who was very passionate about animals. And one day she found a dog on the street. It had just given birth to pups and the dog was unconscious. It was fast dying. So she immediately called him and others, and they took those pups and the dog and went to a veterinary. So the veterinary explained to them the best thing would be to take the dog and the pups back where you found it and leave it there, because this dog was not going to survive. So they took it back and left it there and then watched. The dog didn't die. It was completely unconscious. But the veterinary said, until the pups open their eyes, the life of this dog will remain. And that's exactly what happened. When the eyes of the pups opened, till then this dog unconsciously was feeding the pups. But once the pup's eyes opened, the life of the dog went away. Right? Now, that tells you something about the level of that intelligence that is operating. It didn't require any thought anywhere else. Now, unfortunately, our living is based completely on thought and is driven by the I. And this is reinforced, one, by me, the parent, from a very young age, because I haven't inquired into it, by the lifestyle of the society in which I live, and then by education. At every level, this separation is reinforced. So the question arises, is there another way of living? Before this session started, one participant raised a similar question. She said, why am I so concerned about my child and my child performing well? She was just having a dialogue about it. This is an extension of that discussion. Ramana Maharishi made a very interesting observation. Very early in his life, he made this statement, where whatever is destined not to happen will not happen, try as you may. Whatever is destined to happen will happen. Do what you may to prevent it. This is certain. The best course, therefore, is to remain a silent witness. Now, is this a statement of authority because the Maharishi said it? Is destiny based on authority, or is it the result of observation? So, what is destiny? Destiny is cause and effect. If there is a cause, there has to be an effect. And that effect then becomes a cause. So this is an infinite loop, cause, effect, becoming cause, right? Therefore, there cannot be an end of this whole chain just because physical death has taken place. Now, we interchangeably use this word rebirth and next birth. Rebirth implies there has to be an entity which is being born. That without that assumption, rebirth doesn't stand. But next birth is a different thing. So long as there is an unexpressed cause, it must give a rise to the manifestation which we call birth. Therefore, is next birth a belief, or is it an observation of a logical conclusion of what we are observing? Does it need any authority to say that there will be rebirth or next birth, whichever you call it? So, aren't both destiny and next birth within the field of thought? So then it comes to the question of asking, what is growing up? Now, if you look at the dictionary, and we are very, very influenced by the Western education from which we have received, a child is a human being below the age of puberty. And an adult is defined as a person who is fully grown or developed. So growing up in that culture means achieving your full bodily potential. But can any growing up happen unless the seed is already present? Now, every seed has all the characteristics of the tree in an unmanifest form. No new characteristic that is not present in the seed can be expressed in the process of going up. So environment, food, time, and space result in the seed manifesting as a tree or the child manifesting as an adult. But only what is already there can be expressed. It can't be something that is not there. This culture that we are so impressed by sees this process as a linear process. It sees manifestation of life from birth to death. It completely ignores what happens between death and birth, because in that thinking, they don't go into this question of, is there a continuity of expression? But you can logically see that cause, effect, cause is a cyclical process. It's not a linear process. Therefore, growing up only happens within the realm of time and space. And all time and space come into existence with thought. Therefore, growing up happens only in the realm of thought. What is already giving rise to this manifestation is complete in itself. What is there for it to grow up into? So this unseen process from death to birth also only happens in the realm of thought. It can't happen outside of that. Therefore, all these authority, thought, fear, growing up, they come into existence with the separation of the thinker and the thought, which is the realm of the I. Within this realm, everything is a child of thought, is it not? So our entire living, lifestyle, education, achievements ignore this basic truth. I mean, we intellectually see the validity of these statements, but we ignore that in our day-to-day living. And this is one of the most difficult things I have found to answer, because every so often I get a visitor who comes and says, I would like to educate my children differently. Where do I do it? You can't do it anywhere, because there isn't a single education institution which begins education from these questions, which roots its education in these questions. Every education institution puts the name of its founder on its board, and then they go about doing what they want to do, which is essentially run the machine. And that machine demands conformity to what society wants, because that is what brings in the income. That is what brings in the student. So if you don't conform to the system, you'll be an oddball. And as the participant asked me in the morning, when everybody is running in a certain way, it's very insecure to run against that. But that's the only way you're going to have a different kind of an education. If an individual feels that you have to turn in a different direction, the turn will start with the individual. It won't come from the institution. So can we begin with the individual, which is begin with myself? Am I a separate entity at all? And what does it mean to live a life keeping this question in mind? Am I an entity at all? These are the questions I have to raise for everybody today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gopalan. Thanks a lot. Very interesting discourse, and you have raised very pertinent points for, I think we need a number of sessions to explore all of them, but we can begin talking about it now. Yes, you can ask questions. Thanks a lot. Yes, Harshad bhai. Unmute yourself. Unmute.
Okay. Are
Yeah.
you able to hear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Gopalanji. It was very nice. You are very, very fluent in speaking. And what you said about that fear comes from thinking, that is quite true. But it is not only fear, but many other problems like anger, jealousy, loneliness, boredom, conflict in relationship, all these are coming from thinking. But I feel that thinking can go on without having fear. But from thinking, when this sense of I or me, the thinker, comes, then there is a duality between the thinker and thought. And Krishnaji said that the source of all our psychological problem is because of this duality between thinker and thought. And when I try to verify it, when I first read it, and I found it true, when I really want to observe the beginning of a thought, there was nothing coming, and it was a wonderful state in which there were no even sense of I or me. And so it is quite true that all our psychological problems come from thinking, but I feel that thinking can go on without this thinker coming in. It means that the thinking is going on just by itself, and the duality has not come, the thinker has not come, then it's fine. There are no problems. And in that, there is no psychological time also. But when this sense of I, me comes, then we say, I like it, I don't like it. And then there is the duality between what is and what should be. Otherwise, thinking can go on. So sometimes Krishnaji says that there is a different kind of movement, which is not of normal thinking with the thinker, And this is what I feel. And about the institution and the individual, I agree with you that there is no school which can teach you how to look, how to listen, and how to live without this observer coming into and just pure observation. And I agree with you that in pure observation, there is no authority. And if that in that pure observation, there is no observer, and everything is very, very clear and fresh, new. So this is what I have to say. And about the karma, you said, and that may be true, that the cause and effect, it continues, and maybe it continues even after the death of the body. And so that is why some people from very young age, they have some kind of maturity. Probably they are coming with something with the birth, just like Krishnamurti was very, very unusual from his very early age. So, okay, now Dinesh ji would like to, or Gopalan ji would
Yeah.
like to respond, or Dinesh Wagmare will say.
Gopalan sir want to respond to this or then?
No. Dr. Prarik did not raise a question that I have to respond to. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
My voice is reaching
Yeah.
you? Sir, I want to basically question this thing, why we are giving so much importance to thought. Because thought only breeds or enhances the fear or enhances any emotion. It is not the root cause of fear or this thing. There are so many other things. You yourself said that even in the case of that dog, the dog is not thinking. There is an intelligence working which is having memory also at a particular level. In that memory, there is awareness that these are my kids, or these are the my offshoots, or whatever you may call it. Those since those in case of dog also, unless those have opened their eyes, there was a life in that dog. So at that level also the intelligence is working, and the memories are working at that level also. So one has to see really observe, as you rightly said. We should not treat anybody as authority, and we should go into it. Even in case of fear, what we see, that fear is created when there is a threat stimulus or an external threat situation is pursued by your conscious mind, and accordingly your subconscious mind creates emotions. Now, what is the role of thought in it? Since subconscious mind creates emotions which is poor in logic and works with symbol and images, etc., you can fool it with the artificial situation, or when it is unaware, or when the mind is absorbed with thought, it misreads the situation. The quality of subconscious mind is misused in horror films also to create fear. Though your conscious mind knows that this is a virtual reality, but still the fear is generated. So, and what happens, unless in horror films, if the suitable music is not there, or if the you do not use the right images, the fear is not generated. So at that level also there is a smartness at the level of subconscious mind. So thought has got a very little role to play. There are so many other things. So my question is, why we are giving thought so much importance? Even in case of what you said, rebirth, there also we see that the total data of you in the form of, say, understanding, or whatever the that jivatma, or whatever you may call it at the consciousness level, that has whatever that has collected, that has got the continuity, not the thought itself. If thought has got the continuity, then even in the other next birth also, the person will know that I was in last my birth, I was that gentleman, or this whatever I am. So we have to really see whether thought is really that effective and that powerful to create such emotion. What do you have to say on this?
See,
just one more thing. This understanding, when we say, is understanding a thought, or this wisdom is a thought? Because wisdom uses thought, or the understanding may use the thought. Is the understanding a thought? Whosoever gets the cognizance of any situation or this thing, is he a thought? That is my question.
Yeah, so this we have raised in the past also, that perception, understanding can use thought. Right?
Yes.
So, but just because all the information is in front of us doesn't mean that perception, understanding happen. See, I come from a generation where we used to go to cinema theaters to see movies, right? And when you watch the movie, you also watch the fact that there was a screen in front, there was a projector room at the back. You saw the beam of light coming and falling onto the screen. That did not prevent emotions from arising in you, and not for the moment forgetting that that is only a projection. You were part of it, right? So all that happened from thought. And in this, I would like to connect up to one thing that Dr. Parikh raised. Dr. Parikh was saying there can be a thought without the sense of I at all. I am a little skeptical about it, because memory needs something around which to crystallize, right? When if you have done these experiments in school, making crystals, a crystal cannot start on its own. It needs something to start it. So you give it a hair or a small stick, and around that, it goes on accumulating. And I'm suggesting, you don't have to agree with what I'm saying, I'm suggesting that memory can only accumulate around the sense of the identity of I. Therefore, I comes before thought. Thought is not first and I next. I comes first. Only when there is I does that thought accumulate. Now, we have read about perception, intelligence, understanding using thought. We know that as a statement. What that really means, have we really got the essence of it? I think that is really what is the barrier that at least I need to break for myself. In that moment of observation, there is no I and there is no thinking. And although all the senses are functioning using thought, there is no thinking. And that comes for a very brief moment. At that moment, there is no sense of I, there is no thinking. So can really thinking exist without the sense of the thinker? Can I be aware of it? Can I know it? See, we keep trying to say, can I know the experience? That knowing is only post-mortem. When somebody has cracked a joke and you are laughing, you don't realize that you are laughing. It's a moment afterward you say, "Are kya maja tha." That's always after the event. Therefore, in that present moment, when it is happening, can you know that you are thinking? I have my doubts.
I also wanted to say the same thing, sir. I, as you said in the case of seed, I is having all the traits available already in that, already instincts are there, which are operative irrespective of your thought of I. Those are already having the perception of the situation, and they are operating on their own with the energy, whatever the life force energy is there. So as you rightly said, I is first, and then the other thoughts and other things comes later on.
See, there are some very interesting videos by a few Nobel Prize winning scientists who have now come out with their discovery that water itself has memory, right? If water has memory, 80% of our bodies are water. So you can't have the expression of a body mind without it being in memory. And this is where that approach of negation comes in. I don't know whether I can assert that this is possible, but I can be aware of the fact that at this moment, my thought is active. I can be aware of that and then let that go where it will go. But I can be aware and say, this is coming from here. And this is why, is it possible to really be aware of what caused a thought to rise? See, thought doesn't arise. Every stimulus that we get doesn't result in a thought. It's very selective. So there has to be something which sparked it, which means there's a motive. What is that motive? It may be very deep and hidden down. And this is where relationship becomes important, because it's only in relationship that the motive arises, and therefore you get an opportunity to see it. Right?
Yes, sir. I do agree with you. And even we are having only awareness as tool. We can only use awareness to explore.
Yeah. May I say something here?
Yes, sir.
It seems to me that there are two kinds of self or I exist within us. One is created by thinking, and that self, it comes and goes with thinking. But when there is no thinking, there is something what we call awareness, or some people call it true self. So that exists apart from thinking. And what creates problems like fear is this sense of self coming from thinking, not the true self. And this true self or awareness is not awakened in most human beings. And that's why so many problems like fear, anger, jealousy, conflict arises. But when awareness is awakened, then thinking moves in a proper way, in a proper order, without creating any problem. So our problem mostly comes from this sense of self, which comes from thinking. And when there is no thinking, or when there is awareness, thinking can move in a proper order, just like the way how Krishnamurti spoke. And it is coming from thinking, but it comes from awareness or intelligence. So thinking moves in, and without that, thinking can create many problems. Okay. Anybody else would like?
Clemit has raised her hand.
Yeah,
Clemit.
Dr. Parikh, yeah, can I just respond to what you said? See,
Yes, Gopalan sir.
what you said is what the essence of the spiritual heritage through the scriptures of this land have said, right? Again and again, they have said the same thing. But see our tragedy. We have discarded all that and say that we have to rediscover this ourselves and come to this truth. It has been done a million times in the past, but we say that is past, that is superstition, that is not to be, it's inferior, it's not scientific, or what all have we said. Instead of discarding it like that, is it possible to examine something and then either keep or discard or get the essence of it? It doesn't matter where it comes from.
Yeah, yes.
Clemit.
Yeah, good morning and thank you. So I would like to talk about this, the problem of authority. I feel we have come to this feel that the authority in any way is not good, and I mean this psychologically authority. But then like Mr. Gopalan said in the beginning, he read that sentence where it was saying when Krishnamurti starts talking, we listen to him and he becomes the authority. So my question is this that we have this feeling like when Krishnamurti says something, it must be so. When Ramana Maharshi says something, it must be so, or any other such person says something, we give them the sense of authority. And we tend to believe that and take it as for granted. So why do we do that? Even though when we hear Krishnamurti saying that don't make me into an authority, find out for yourself and all that. We know all that, but that tendency continues. So why do we do that? I have a feeling that, first of all, there is one kind of authority that we never talk about, which is a natural authority, which is like the authority of the mother through the child. The child, there is an authority, of course there is, otherwise there will be no possibility for education. If you talk to a child as a mother or as a father and they don't listen to you, they say nothing, they don't know anything or something like that, it will be completely chaotic. But there is a natural authority which comes not by imposition, not by saying you have to respect me. I am the one who is going to tell you. But there is a natural authority that comes from something deeper in you that knows that there is a respect for people like Krishnamurti, for people like Ramana Maharshi, because we know they have gone beyond from where we are. We sense it. We can feel it. I have heard many people saying that when Krishnamurti comes, there was a different feel in the room. There was a different atmosphere that was created by his presence. So that itself is an authority. That feel, that atmosphere that is created by his presence. That is not created when I come into the room. So we know that. And this is a natural authority, because it is not imposed. The person is not saying, see here, I am going to tell you the things and you listen it, you follow. So this natural authority, we have to recognize it, and there is no question about it. And this is everywhere. If we are in a small group discussing, talking about something, there will be one person in that group that has more clarity than the others. And that person will have some natural authority upon the others. That's natural. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem comes in when we want to impose authority. When the mind comes in and says, this is the one to be respected, this is the one to be listened to. But the heart, there is something deeper in us that senses and has this feeling that it is a natural thing that happens. So I feel we have to be cautious with this, and each one on its own level. So a mother is something that she may not be saying anything that makes sense to us, but we don't have the guts to say anything that will hurt her, because there is a natural feel of respect, and that becomes, which is also love. So that itself has its own authority, and it has its own way. So to discard completely everything, like no authority whatsoever, why are we listening to Krishnamurti, Ramana Maharshi, or somebody else? I think it is going a bit too far. We have to have discrimination about things also. No, that is one thing. And the other thing that I would like to talk to Mr. Gopalan is about observation. You have mentioned many times during what you were saying in the beginning about observing, and out of logic come to some understanding. But you see, there is one thing, observation alone is not enough. I feel observation is the beginning. We start with observation because we don't even do that normally. We are very impulsive, and we go about life like that without observing things, giving it a proper attention. And that is also because we are very outroverted. I mean, projected to outside things. The senses, you know, the colorful things, the beautiful things, the ugly things, so like that. But observation is not enough. To understand deeply all these things, like what Ramana said about that what is meant to happen will happen, what is not meant to happen will not happen. But he also said something else among this, which is very important. He says this is because whatever happens in this life has already been determined in previous life, and you cannot change it now. That also means that in this life you are creating the next one. So, and he says the best course is to be silent, because since you cannot change it, whatever is meant to happen will happen. But he says this is because it is already determined in the previous life. Anyhow, to understand this that they are saying, observation is not enough. We need insight to really see what they are talking about, to really see for ourselves, which is also what Krishnamurti says. You have to see for yourself. And see is not understanding. Understanding is still at the level of the mental, of the level of the mind. But seeing is different. So I think, and seeing can only happen through insight. And insight, we cannot decide when it will come, when it will not come. And if it comes or if it does not come, we don't know. It is a mysterious thing. So that's the point that I would like to say.
Yeah. So if I may respond, first, there are 2 or 3 responses I would have for you. First is that we live in a world where knowledge is getting more and more and more important, right? And there is an authority in that area of knowledge. I mean, when you go to a doctor, you listen to what he says because he has studied more than you about the body. When you are in an aircraft, the pilot has the complete authority because you don't know how to fly a plane. So there is an authority that happens as the world gets more and more technological. And you become a slave to that because everybody cannot reach every level of achievement in that knowledge, right? Now, so there is a requirement to just accept, and the same acceptance we take to the other level also. So when you said about natural authority, yes, there is natural authority of the mother, as you put it. There is also a natural responsibility of the mother. And this is the discussion that one of our friends had started just before 12 o'clock. She said, I'm a mother. What is preventing me from seeing that I should just provide the right environment for the child and let the child open up and flower the way he is meant to flower? But I have all my fears. Everybody is going to this school. Everybody is going to this college. Should my child not be doing it? So although I have that natural authority, I have the responsibility, I have also got my own confusions. It's all there. So the moment you talk of responsibility and sensitivity, this is the question that Krishnamurti asked again and again in his talk, right? Would you as a parent send your child to war? But that's what we are preparing them for in terms of employment skills. All our employment skills are funded by war and divisive activity. But that's what brings you the money. So am I supposed to starve? This is the kind of reaction that will happen. I think that is the journey that every person has to take. And what normally happens is the child, I become a parent when I have not even started asking all these questions. And as the child is growing up, I am also realizing that if I had a second choice, I wouldn't have done this 10 years ago, but it's too late. You can't change it. So what can you do? You can give your affection to the child. You can hold your questions to the child, and you can come to this understanding that I am not the controller of my life. If that understanding comes, then you understand what it means to flow with life. But if you look at our entire lifestyle, particularly education, because education is a very dominant part of it, from the age of 2.5 till the age of 30, right? The message is you are responsible for everything that happens in your life, which is a wrong message. And there isn't a single education that happens anywhere in the world where they say, look, begin with this deeper question. Hold the deeper question and prepare for your livelihood. Nobody talks about that because that's very difficult. And unless the individual, the teacher is doing that in his life, how can he communicate anything to the child? So very conveniently, we have outsourced education and said, now it's the responsibility of the system. The system will only produce what it can produce, and this is what it produces. So see, whatever be my age, my responsibility as a parent doesn't end. Even when I'm 80 years old, I'm still the father for that child. He may be 60 years old. I'm still the father. He is looking at me to see what journey have I undertaken in my life after all this understanding. And if he sees a movement of inquiry, there is something that communicates. But if he sees me running in the same cycle of fear, conformity, seeking security in the outer world, then he starts having complete contempt for what I'm saying, because he's saying, you are talking philosophy, you're not living it yourself. So I think it's very important to learn what it means to walk the talk. We don't have to worry about what all the seers said. This is what I can do. Can I walk the talk? Can I live what I say and say what I live? I have fear. But somebody has pointed out that through inquiry, you can see the root of fear. And if you see the root of it, you end it. Somebody's pointed it out for me to take the journey through my life.
Durga Rani, please unmute and say.
Yeah, just a minute. Can I just say something to Mr. Gopal in response? Yeah, so it will be quick. So just to say, you are saying there is no educational system in the world that will help you with the fundamental question. But then I have a question: is Krishnamurti School not one of these places that are at least trying to come to this point and working this kind of situation where a child will be helped to go on with this fundamental question? That is one thing. And the other thing is, you were just saying towards the end that even if I am 80 years old, I will be the mother or the father of the child. I feel education never ends. And an important thing that you say that is that we have to learn what it means to walk the talk. That is really, really important in education. And if we are in touch with any child, is it my child, not my child, anybody, or even a grown-up person, because whatever we say does not have much impact on a person, but whatever we do does. So I have an example, it's a personal example. I have a son who lives in Brazil, and I am here in India for 8 years now. And he knows that I am in this quest and all that, of course. And one day I was in a retreat and I was coming back by train, and the train, I was in the station and it was not coming. And I start sending message to him, conversation. It was 6 o'clock in the evening here, but there it was very early in the morning. He was not awakened. Suddenly he woke up and he saw that bundle of messages and he got worried. And he called me, what is happening? I said, no, I'm sitting here, nothing to do. I start messaging him. And he said, my goodness, what is happening to you? You are 8 years in India. You are reading Krishnamurti. You are doing all these things in retreats and all this. And you are still anxious. So that is what you do is much more important than what you say.
Yeah.
Durga Rani, please unmute and say.
Yes. Good morning, sir. Good morning, everybody. Yeah. It's as usual. It's a very nice, very passionate discussion. Whenever you take up your sessions and all, and I really, whatever my previous participants have, Clemis and Mr. Dinesh, they've also contributed very valuable points. I just have to contribute 3 points, sir. Just share my understanding of the questions which you have raised. So first of all, you said, what is an authority? That's how when I started the session, that's how it began. And how can we find out whether what Krishnamurti or anybody else is saying, whether that is true or not? For me, that answer I have to say is the resonance you get in yourself. First of all, why does one read Krishnamurti at all? There are hundreds and thousands of people who don't come across Krishnamurti, who even if they come across Krishnamurti, they don't read. But what does it make one to read Krishnamurti in the first place? And what does it make one to go on in that path? That is some kind of a resonance one finds in oneself. And Krishnaji spoke so much about unconscious. I think somewhere in that unconscious response to whatever that has been read, and maybe that's how the connection begins. And invariably one gets connected to Krishnaji, and of course he can never become an authority, because whatever he says, it's not easy. There is a whole length and breadth one has to travel to get in contact with whatever the little what he's saying to. First of all, that inner clarity one has to come across. And one more thing, sir, you are also saying about, am I an entity at all? And the other areas you say one has to make these kind of adjustments, and one has to make maybe the previous speaker, she said about discrimination. Unless and until we use our own intelligence to live the life, he spoke about so many things, not about only thought and observation. The entire panorama of human life has been discussed. For me, sir, like maybe we have to broaden our inquiry. We have to broaden our spectrum of explorations. He has given everything, but are we there at all? Are we still struggling with the basic things or something? Maybe. And there is one more thing you say. It's growing up. I feel there is nothing called growing up. There is an insight which says the limitations of thought. Thought as an instrument has its own limitations. It can't take you further. When one understands the limitations of thought, maybe, and he says there is no evolution at all. There is no evolution. It is only that arriving at that understanding, arriving at that insight. Am I too scattered everywhere? Have I come across focusing on what it is all about? Or or my mind is traveling in all directions? So all this chopping and maybe pruning one needs to do in one's life. Otherwise, maybe one is stuck there itself. One can keep revolving in circles, keep using words. And he says, word is not the thing. In order to understand the way the message is coming from, maybe one needs to go beyond word. That happens only when thought is silent. Well, that happens only in non-verbal understanding. Maybe that's how it begins. And then he spoke so much about self. The whole culprit is not thought. It is I, me, myself. The whole world. And the present day world is an indication of the worst form of I, me, myself. Nobody has time for anybody. Nobody, even the child also. He or she, recently my grandchildren are here. They're not bothered to see the trees. They are in the rat race. How am I going to achieve more? How am I going to make more money? I'm seeing all this. But I can't correct them just like that. No, don't do like that. I can't do that. We just have to allow them to be what where they are first of all. Later on, it is up to them to come. I just told them, be watchful of other things also, the trees, the nature and all that. Because there is nothing else much you can do. You just be observant and this kind of a non-verbal inquiry that goes on in one's life. There will be confusion. There will be sorrow. There will be all that we go through. But do we have that kind of a common sense? I can't say intelligence. Do we have that common sense to draw the line? Okay, this much is good. If I'm not going to get swallowed by all these things, if I as a human being, if I don't draw the line, who is going to draw the line for me? I have to draw the line. I have to see, okay, I need to find out what are the depths he is speaking of. Let me go into it. That can happen only I as an entity. I'm not saying that I in that big words, unless and until that kind of maybe interest, that curiosity, that passion doesn't arise in me to go further. How will it come? Krishnamurti can't force it in anybody. He spoke so passionately, but for 60 long years, he tried all kinds of words, phrases, usages to just make us pause, to wonder, to look at things, to live life in a different way. Different way doesn't mean that one becomes a seer, one becomes a guru. There may be some kind of moments of clarity, moments of tranquility in one's life, but life goes on. Who are we in this vast stream of life? Just because if we read Krishnamurti, we become gurus or teachers or something like that. You just become a part of the flow of life. This vast, expanse of life. We are not even small dust particles in this, but only we are gifted with some intelligence to come across these kind of books and read and understand and assimilate few things and share and live by it. That's all we have to do. If we keep on keep getting embroiled in this, questions and the basic questions, we cannot move further from this. That's all I have to contribute, sir. Thank you.
Gopalan sir, you wanted to comment on it? Or I must say?
No, I think what Clemis said is the essence of it. When she was coming away from the retreat and waiting for a train, right? She had to keep sending the messages to her son, who said, "Why are you so anxious?" See, this curse has come to all of us now with the smartphone. When we are waiting anywhere, it's very difficult to just sit quiet. We take the phone, either we'll send a WhatsApp or we'll send a message or we'll go to Google and browse something. See, technology is helping us to go outward, and at that time, the discrimination doesn't act. It's very tempting. We don't put it aside. This is what I meant by walking the talk. If I can be aware that I'm at my age being trapped by a smartphone, I need to be very careful to ensure that I don't miss out the technology which it brings me, but not get caught in it. And that's a very fine balance. It's constant awareness.
Gopal Narayan.
Shankar Narayan.
Shankar Narayan.
Yeah, namaste, sir. Namaste. Sir, coming to karma, as you pointed out, is it's clearly a cause and effect. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's clearly cause and effect. Somewhere we have seen that it is clearly a material process. It's a material process. Karma, as in, if I eat salt, water has to be taken. That's very clear. But it seems like social engineering has entered into this karma, as in next birth, live of rebirth. I mean, rebirth, again, we are bringing in some sort of continuity there as far as the separation. But this whole business of next birth itself comes where we are bringing in a time factor which is a bit long. I eat salt, the body asks for water immediately. Then I say it's karma. If the stretches more, then I put it on next birth. Is this a sort of a social engineering that was required by the societies in the garb of religion? But who is measuring all this? Is the question. All this boils down to who is this measurer at all? As pointed out very clearly, we need measurement as far as the body, sensation, and thought is concerned. Yes, we need measurements. But I think we are stretching measurement beyond the functional aspect of it. And somewhere it looks like this karma thing has become a sort of thermodynamic sink, where you put whatever heat, the temperature will not go up. Like in the Western world, the Abrahamic religions have invented certain symbols. In East, possibly those symbols have become glorified with the Sanskritam term called karma. Instead of putting it on a cross or somebody who is going to take up all the heat that has been given, is this inducing of one more term called next birth or reincarnation or all this, or I mean, leave of reincarnation? That's very clearly a sort of separative process. But even to call it a next birth, where we are bringing a time element, has social engineering become something that we call as religion today? And shouldn't religion question the limits of thought? I think religion is where the limits of thought has been taken to the peak, as in measurement. What is your seeing on this?
See, questions have been put to Krishnamurti many times about karma. His interesting answer, which I think is the essence of it, is, look, if karma says that you are going to be in the future what you are now, the only thing that matters is how you are living your moment now. So I think that's the take we have to take from that. We don't have to get caught into the theory and why it happened, what was the motive behind, right? But if even scientific logic says where there is a cause, there must be an effect. How am I living my life now? Because that's what it's going to be tomorrow if I don't change today. So it comes down to walking the talk. How you live your life today, this moment. That's all that matters. Why do we have to worry about what it will be or how I will be living tomorrow?
Ravi, you can speak.
Yeah. Good morning. I have two questions. Can I transform the intellectual understanding into real realization and absolute understanding, as Krishnamurti says? And the second question, again, as Krishnamurti says, that can I wipe out or end all the conditioning or recording in a moment, just like a fear. He says that you can end the whole tree of the fear in a moment. The third may be extension of the second question, that while listening to K, he says that are you working together with me? So while listening to him, can I wipe out that fear or other emotions in a moment? Because I think I have understood almost many of the things intellectually, but it's not transforming into real realization. Thank you.
These are questions I think we have been hearing from 1980s itself. See, I think we listen to Krishnamurti because he uses words. He has to use words in a talk. So when he says that, we very concretely break it up intellectually and then say, if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, now I must see the result as 5. I must see the result. I can only see what my brain thought can allow. I can't see beyond that. So again and again and again, we encourage that the same self, and it wants to assimilate all that and be in charge of the show. That's why I think we should listen to Krishnamurti. We should listen to anybody, understanding that we are not listening to Krishnamurti. We are listening to ourselves. When we listen to Krishnamurti, we are not listening to what he said. We don't know what he said. Because what we are getting is only what our thought is giving us. So we are listening to ourselves. So can we examine what we have listened to without referring to Krishnamurti? Yes, Krishnamurti was the starting point. He said this in this talk. Fine. What's the truth of that? Can I take the responsibility for my understanding? And can understanding ever be intellectual? And this is the thing that I think we've been saying again and again. Can perception, insight use the intellect? Intellect cannot understand. Intellect can analyze, it can break up, it can compare, it can give names, but that is not understanding. But this separation as intellect, and then there is a deeper, and then there is the body, all this is also from the intellect. One cannot function without the other. So it is one integrated whole, and it always functions as a whole. Therefore, some of the parts don't make a whole. Therefore, can inquiry also be from the whole?
Pradeep Verma ji.
Please unmute and say, Pradeep ji.
Pradeep Verma ji.
Yes. Audible? Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Audible and visible both.
Oh, okay. I have no questions, but a small thing about a natural authority, what Clemis was referring to, may be the result of a vibrational harmony between persons, location, and time in non-verbal communication. But in this state, there is no one to assert an authority. We may call it a force. It's a question of using some other word for that. But this may be that. This came to me after listening to Clemis about natural authority. Thank you very much.
There is a word they use in English called communion, which we don't explore too much in our dictionary. So when the two separate minds don't exist, but Krishnamurti asked that in questioning, in inquiry, can you raise the question in a dialogue so that ultimately there is only the question, not the person asking the question?
Yes.
Can that kind of communion happen?
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Prasad sir.
Prasad sir, please.
Sir, I am really impressed that Gopalan sir has devoted his life to Krishnaji. But I have a small question from the title he has given for his talk. I can understand that thought is the parent of fear. But I am not really getting what you mean by, can the child grow up? Can the fear grow up? grow up, we normally use it in a very positive sense. That child is growing up, he is becoming an adult, he is developing in understanding and things like that. But what do we mean when we say, can fear grow up?
Right.
I couldn't get it, sir, from
Right.
your exposition. I shall be grateful if you clarify.
So many children have a fear of darkness, right? Now you expect that when the child becomes an adult, he will outgrow that fear because he knows that darkness is nothing but absence of light, right? And that it's just out of sight. There is nothing to be afraid of there. In the same way, when as a child, in the beginning, there is fear. As we grow up, can we understand that the root of fear is in my imagining what may happen? Only in imagining what may happen or may not happen does fear arise. If I don't imagine and I'm here, where is the fear? That is what I meant by growing up. Can I have that understanding and see it and live it that way?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ravi, please unmute and ask.
Can you let me know the meaning of the whole as you answered my questions?
Sir, that when I say the whole, I'm saying that in that moment of understanding that takes place, whether it's in studying mathematics or in understanding a problem, that understanding is not of thought intellect. My thought intellect has been used as a tool, but that understanding is always a flash. Therefore, right through my life, I am never separate from that energy which is able to understand. It is never away from me. That is what I mean by a whole. So that supports my body, that supports my mind. My body and mind don't exist without that. But our thought says, now I have to understand, as if I am separate from the others. This illusion of separation, that is why language is a problem. I don't know if I can ever understand, but understanding can happen.
Thank you very much.
You wanted to add something? Yeah, please. Please do. Please come forward.
No, I just want to say that there is this understanding or seeing, it happens by itself when we are deeply interested, looking at the thinking process, and suddenly there is no thinking, just looking. And when such a thing happens in the life of a human being, a person feels that there is something else apart from thinking and feeling within us. And normally it is hidden under dense layer of thinking and feeling, this awareness or seeing clearly. But sometimes when we are deeply looking at something what Krishnamurti may have said or somebody else, then thinking stops. And at that time, there is a different state. And once it happens, then we see the real beauty of it. And then it can go on every day. Whenever we are looking, the mind stops. And in that, there is a freshness. But generally, human beings are afraid of that thought coming to an end. And so they want to escape from that state of that silent looking. And that is why freedom is not possible when we are afraid of freedom. And freedom is clear. seeing without thinking. Okay, I have finished.
Gopalan sir, would you please end it by some comment?
I think I have said what I've had to say, sir, and the discussion has been very good. I hope we will continue this because otherwise I don't think there is anything that I need to respond specifically to. Only one comment. There's something in the chat box saying Ramana Maharishi might not have said that. The history is that that particular statement that whatever what will happen and will not happen. The story is when he had come to the Arunachala hill, his mother came there and he was in silence. He wouldn't talk to her, but she was crying and begging him to come. So people around said, mother is asking, you have to answer something. So he took a piece of charcoal and wrote this, but the original writing is in Tamil, and that writing is available in the archives of the ashram. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dinesh, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, regarding this authority, I want to say something. I can use authority of any this seers like Krishnamurti or Ramana Maharshi. But ultimately, I have to understand, I have to do working on me and I have to see what works for me. I'm not what I think I am. I am what I am experiencing, that I am.
Yeah.
And I have to also see what are the facts available in my life, what is happening actually, that I have to see, and that can only give me the understanding. What Gopalan sir has to say.
So what you started with is, I can use authority. Absolutely. I can use authority to drive home my point, right? I can use authority to say you are wrong. I am not able to convince you. So I say, no. Krishnamurti said this in this talk on this page. So I'm saying now you take the answer from that. So I can use it for such purposes. But it's not Krishnamurti. It's my understanding that I am communicating with. And that's all that matters.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Would you? Next Sunday, we will having Durga Rani on the same subject. Durga Rani is very much here. Durga Rani will take next Sunday on the same subject. So let me end it here.
Thank you, Gopalan sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gopalan sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to everybody who participated. Please end it.